Hi, I'm Marisa Hughes. I'm the chair of Lake Monticello's Wildlife Committee. We have Claire Sanderson. She is Director of Monitoring at the Rivanna Conservation Alliance, and Bailey Pleasant, who has the big job as the Rivanna Conservation Alliance's Watershed Manager. And the Rivanna Conservation Alliance, they do a lot of work, which they'll be telling us about. They're a nonprofit watershed management organization. They work to conserve the Rivanna rivers.
So I'm going to talk first, and then Bailey will talk for the second half. So we'll get started. And Bailey's going to be doing my slides for me. So we will start. But I just wanted to start with just a bit of an outline of what we're going to be talking about. And so first, I'm just going to do a brief introduction to the Rivanna Conservation Alliance for those who may not be as familiar. We're going to be talking about stream health. What is it? How we measure it? Why it's important? And then how we can restore stream health. When we measure it, we're also going to talk about our water quality monitoring programs. And then Bailey's going to jump in, and he's going to be talking about recent and ongoing RCA restoration projects, and then how we as both community volunteers and property owners can actually help our watershed as well. So first off, RCA is a small watershed not-profit located in Charlottesville. We have the equivalent of 5 full-time staff, 2 of which are here tonight. So we're very, very small. But we do have a really far reach within the watershed because we have such wonderful and many partners that we work with, other local nonprofits, government agencies and community groups. And then we also have such a very dedicated, wonderful volunteer base who help us enact all of our projects as well. And so we have been working in the watershed for at least 35 years, but back then we were kind of known as 2 different local nonprofits. So we actually formed in 2016, but before that we were the Rivanna Conservation Society, if you wouldn't mind moving the thing. One more, yeah. And so that really focused on education, outreach, and stewardship. And then the other local nonprofit was Streamwatch, which was a volunteer-supported water quality monitoring program. And so those 2 came together in 2016 and formed RCA. And then our mission became to work with the community to conserve the Rivanna River and its watershed through water quality monitoring, restoration, education, and stewardship. And so all of the work that we do is within the Rivanna River watershed. For anyone who may not be as familiar with the term watershed, it is just the total area of land that contains streams and rivers that all drain to the same place. So within this blue area of our watershed, all of the streams and rivers there will drain to the Rivanna River. And so our watershed is quite small, but we are about 766 square miles, and it encompasses the city of Charlottesville, the majority of Albemarle County, Greene County, Fluvanna County, and then little bits of Orange and Louisa as well. And I just put this in to show that so the Rivanna drains into the James River goes into the Chesapeake. So we are also part of the James River watershed as well as the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And so I just wanted to put that in to show how connected we all are through our waterways. And the importance of kind of what we do in our watershed is not only important for our communities that live within it, but also our downstream neighbours as well. And so RCA has 6 core program areas. Bailey and I will be focusing on our monitoring and our restoration program, so I won't talk about them here, but I wanted to just introduce you to the other 4 quickly. And then if you have any questions or would like some additional information, I can always give that after the presentation. But first off, we have a very large education program, and so we deliver watershed field trips to at least 1,400 school children every year. So all of the sixth graders in Albemarle County Public Schools go on these field trips, as well as all the seventh graders at the City of Charlottesville as well. And then we have a lot of other educational events around the watershed, including in Rivanna County as well. We also do a lot, we attend a lot and also host a lot of community outreach events. We have a very special one coming up. If anyone's heard of the Rivanna River Fest, that's coming up May 9th. And so that's just an opportunity where we all get together, celebrate the river. We have a lot of vendors that have a lot of like educational and environmental focused activities, live music, things like that. So that's always a good time. We also look at access, so we work with partners, especially the Rivanna River Company, and we provide opportunities for people to access and experience the Rivanna who may not otherwise have those opportunities. And then last but not least, we have stewardship, and we have so many cleanups that we put on, both on and off the river. And so people can also go out by themselves and do cleanups as well. So why do we care about healthy waterways? And I'm sure all of you know about the benefits of clean and healthy waterways and the services that these waterways can provide us. But I just wanted to focus on just a couple really quickly. First, for the majority of us living in the Rivanna River watershed, our drinking water comes from our waterways. And so 70% of residents living in Albemarle County and the City of Charlottesville, and 40% of residents living in Rivanna County, our drinking water is surface water, is from surface water. It's from our reservoirs and sometimes also taken directly out of the Rivanna, which I believe Lake Monticello's water source is taken directly from the Rivanna. So if we have dirty water in our waterways, then one effect is that the treatment cost is going to skyrocket here, but then also we have then public health issues as well. So very important to keep them clean and healthy. The Rivanna also provides us with so many opportunities to relax, to recreate, to connect to the people and to nature, and that has enormous physical and emotional well-being impacts as well. Another one, it also supports a diversity of wildlife habitats. We're so lucky here to have such a myriad of different species, from fish, birds. We have otters, this is a beaver, but we also have otters. We also have endangered species like the James spiny mussel as well. So yeah, a lot going on in our waterways. And then last but not least, the economy is also impacted by the Rivanna. So recreation and tourism surrounding the Rivanna River is a really growing segment of our economy. And it's also really important for our local identity as well. So I've just got two pictures up here to show a healthy stream and a not healthy stream. I was going to see if you could choose which is, it's a little bit tricky, but yeah, it's this one. So this one's a healthy one. This one's not healthy. And some of the reasons why, and Bailey's going to go into more detail about this, but I just wanted to point some things out. One thing that we see here is that we have so much vegetation. We have a really healthy forested riparian buffer. And that not only helps to shade the stream, so the water is cooler, which means there's going to be more dissolved oxygen, the bugs in there and the animals are going to be so much more happier. But then those trees also provide woody debris and leaves for habitat and then also food as well. And so, yeah, physical characteristics like stable banks, rocky substrate, adequate vegetation, shade, and obviously organic matter is really important. Water quality, we want clean, clear, cool water. And then last, we want a diversity of organisms, and we'll kind of talk more about that in a minute. But as you can see on the right-hand side, This stream does not have a forested buffer. When it rains, that's all just going to go straight directly into this river, and it's going to cause it to be what we call a flashy stream. So it's just going to go really quickly through this stream and cause erosion, taking all of this sediment with it. When it rains in this one, the vegetation will act like a sponge, and so it will slow the movement of the water into the stream. And so at RCA we use a couple of different ways to measure stream health, but we have two main water quality monitoring programs that are volunteer supported. And the first one is our bacteria monitoring program. And this is where our staff and our volunteers go out and we collect water samples that we then test for E. coli bacteria. And so E. coli is it's a naturally occurring organism in the guts of humans and other animals. And if you would like to go to the next one. And it is also considered an indicator organism. So when we find it in high amounts in the environment, it's an indication that there is fecal contamination. But because water is always constantly changing, it's very dynamic. When we take a water sample to test it, we're just looking at a snapshot in time. And so when we do our bacterial monitoring, what we are looking for is the recreational health of the stream or the river. And then we have our biological monitoring program as well, and this is where our volunteers go out and we sample for benthic macroinvertebrates, which are the small organisms that live on the bottoms of our rivers and streams. Again, I'll go into a little bit more detail in a minute. But because with this program, we are actually looking at the animals that live in the stream, and they live there for a few years at least, instead of just a water sample, which is always changing. It provides a longer-term picture of water quality, and this type of monitoring is actually is how we measure overall stream health. And this is unfortunately not the best map, but I just wanted to quickly put it in here just to show the watershed. And then we have 21 long-term bacteria sites that we sample at on different schedules. So they are the yellow triangles. It's a little bit difficult to see. The majority are located in and around Charlottesville, but we have two down in Fluvanna, one at the Crofton boat launch on the Rivanna and one at the Palmyra boat launch. And then we have 50 long-term biological sites shown in pink that we sample twice per year. Here I just wanted to show Fluvanna County. So again, just those two bacteria sites, and then we have 12 biological sites that we monitor as well, including one that we have here at Lake Monticello, which we sample twice per year. This is a tributary into Jackson Cove. Bailey and I actually just sampled it a couple of weeks ago. And actually we got a fairly good diversity of organisms, so it'll be interesting to see what the score is. We work very closely with the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, and while they have their own biologists that go out and sample, they cannot reach every area in the state. So they really rely on organizations like ours to provide water quality monitoring data to them as well. And so they have a certification system for volunteer-supported water quality monitoring programs. And this is just showing the different levels that those programs can be. And both of ours are certified as level 3, which is the highest scientific level. And it just means that the data that we collect, the data our volunteers collect, is of the same high quality as if DEQ collected it themselves, and so they can use that data to make all sorts of environmental decisions. And again, we also work with a lot of different partners. Our water quality monitoring programs actually have what we call a scientific advisory committee, and it is made up of water professionals from a whole host of these partners. So we have someone from the city of Charlottesville, someone from Albemarle County, someone from the Rivanna Water Authority, etc. And so we meet regularly to go over our protocols and to go over anything that we may need help with. And they provide funding as well as program support and scientific feedback. And then in turn, we can then provide reliable, high quality stream health data to them that they can use. This is a lot of information, but I just wanted to show you all the different ways, or some of the different ways that our data can be used by these organizations. The first one, and by community members as well. So the first one, we put all of our bacteria data onto our website. And so a lot of residents rely on that data. They go there regularly to check on the E. coli levels in the Rivanna to see, so they can make informed decisions about whether or not they would like to recreate in the water. Both of our monitoring programs over the years have identified sewage leaks. Bailey actually discovered one last year when he was out bacteria sampling at Pollock's Branch, which is one of our most urban streams in Charlottesville. And there was some development happening upstream, and the digger hit the pipe, didn't realize it. So luckily, Bailey was able to notify the city of Charlottesville, and they were able to go out and fix it straight away. So that was, it was a great thing. We also share all of our data, as I said, with DEQ, and they, from that data, they're able to list and delist streams as impaired. Over the years, with our data alone or in conjunction with their data, we have listed over 175 miles of streams as impaired within our watershed, which sounds very bleak, but it also sets the stage for cleanup actions. So we do have these in place in certain watersheds. And so our data can also be used to see how these cleanup plans are actually shaping up as well. So I'm going to go back to how we measure stream health and our biological monitoring program, because I just wanted to give a little bit more information. And so with our biological monitoring program, what we do is we go out with a big net and we sample for those benthic macroinvertebrates, those little organisms on the bottom of our rivers and streams. And the majority are the terrestrial, so the larval stages of terrestrial insects. So we have, say, mayflies, stoneflies, dragonflies, all of the larvae, they're living in our rivers and streams. And then we have non-insect macroinvertebrates as well. So our mollusks, our snails, crayfish, etc. And these benthic macroinvertebrates are known as biological indicators. They have many amazing characteristics. One, they're found in all aquatic environments. Two, they have limited mobility. I mentioned that a little bit before, but because they live in the same place and don't move around a lot, they're there for at least 2 to 3 years. They have high exposure to what's happening in the water. And they have also been studied for hundreds of years, and each organism is known to have a different tolerance value to pollution. And so each organism that we find, we identify to the family level, and each family is given a tolerance value from 0, meaning that it is very sensitive to pollution. It's only found in very pristine areas, to 10, which is like, this a black fly larva, it could live, very happily in not so good water quality. And then these bacteria, these benthic macroinvertebrate assemblages, the community structure will change depending on what's happening in the water. And so when we go out, depending on who we find and how many we find, it will give us an accurate representation of the stream health at that site. And we also get a stream health score that goes from 0 to 100. And so if we go to the next, so every year we put out a stream health report. And so these are the results from our 2025 stream health report. With our bacteria data, we analysed the last year of the bacteria data and put it in our stream health report. For our biological monitoring program, we analysed the last 3 years and put it in our stream health report. And so any dot that you see is one of our sampling sites, and if it's green or blue, it means that they scored above 60, and it also means that they meet Virginia's water quality standard for aquatic life. Anything that has a score of 60 or below, so the yellow ones and the red ones, they fail to meet Virginia's water quality standard for aquatic life. We do have a lot of blue and green on there, which is fantastic, but unfortunately 56%, so the majority of our sites are still not meeting Virginia's water quality standard. Again, that sounds really bleak, but we do have options. And so put this in here just to show that, so we have a timeline down the bottom here of 100 years, and we have a degraded stream. And you can see slowly but surely it's kind of the ecological health is increasing. And so this is just to show that over time, given enough time, a degraded stream will fix itself. So if this went on for a little bit longer, it will eventually get up to an undisturbed kind of stream state. It will go back to its natural state. But we can get there much faster if we do some intervention here. And that is what the next section of our talk is going to be about, which is restoration. And so when we talk about restoration, what we are talking about is just using landscape practices that mimic natural structures and processes to return a river or stream to a stable natural state. But we do have 4 major focus areas. I'm just going to talk about the first one, and then Bailey's going to talk about the other 3. But the first one is removing dam terms to increase fish passage in our watershed. And so it's really important to have unobstructed fish passage. One, we have native trout, especially up in our headwater streams, that really need access to cold water to survive. We also have migratory fish, so we have sea lamprey and we have American eel that make their way to and from the ocean. All fish need access to a diversity of habitat to adapt to changing water levels and water temperatures. And last but not least, our freshwater mussels, just like our James spiny mussel, rely on fish as hosts for their development and dispersal into new habitat. So it's very important for them to be able to migrate as they need to. This is going back a little bit, but was anyone here when the Woolen Mills Dam in Charlottesville was around?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, cool. Yeah, so there was a big dam that went across the Rivanna River in Charlottesville. This was the view before 2007. And what we did, we partnered with DWR, and we went out and we did a fish survey before the dam was taken down, and then we did a fish survey a few years later to see what the impact was the, on fish populations. So the circles, how big they are just represents how many fish in that species. But we found 67 fish, so not many really, and there was 6 species. And then after the dam was taken down, we found 1,160 fish and 32 different species. So it had a huge impact on those fish being able to migrate up into our waterways. And so more recently, in 2021 and 2022, we partnered with the Fish and Wildlife Service to go out and assess high priority stream crossings. So what we were doing, we were going out, we were sitting under bridges like this and looking at culverts, measuring them, seeing if there were going to be barriers for access for fish. We assessed 248. We found 32 that were significant or severe barriers to fish passage. And so this is just the first part of this project. And so hopefully this data will then be used by other agencies to be able to work on these crossings to increase fish passage. So I took these videos last week, I think it was. So we are partnering with the Rivanna Water and Sewer Authority. They have a dam on the North Fork, which is actually just upstream from where these guys are. And I went out and sampled their benthic sampled. And when I finished, I decided to walk a little bit upstream and I saw these sea lampreys. So these guys had come from the ocean all the way up the North Fork, and they are making a nest to spawn, and then these guys are going to die. And when their babies are ready, they'll go back down to the ocean. So yeah, it's very neat. Never seen them before. So I was very excited.
Can you just help us make sure that we understand, even though we say a green dot or yellow dot on the map, nothing that's really being tested is inside of our lake. It's all outside, because what we were told was because we mechanically dredge, the benthic organisms are outside the lake that you're looking at.
So we have one site inside the lake at the tributary that we sample.
But that's outside of Jackson Cove. It's considered inside the lake property, but it's outside of where we dredge.
Got you. Yeah, it goes into the lake. It's not in the lake, correct. Yeah. And so we use a method called the rocky bottom sampling method. So where we sample is we need kind of rocky bottom streams where there's riffles. And so we would need if we were to sample, say, the lake, then that would be a different method. But there would be, yeah, definitely do that. Yeah.
All right, so we have talked a lot about streams and water quality monitoring. We're going to take a little bit time to talk about what's happening on the terrestrial level, because all across our watershed is land that is feeding our watersheds, and we have to do a lot to protect them, including planting riparian forests. And so RCA does a lot of planting of riparian forests. We have a couple of before and after pictures here of buffers that have been planted since 2019. It takes these tree seedlings, which they are initially just tree seedlings when they go in, a couple of years to become established and really start growing. But I hope that you can see a difference in these two images, where we did a planting at Burley Middle School in Charlottesville, and a planting also down at the Rivanna River Company, also located in Charlottesville. And despite these seedlings having been small to start with, 6 years later, they're very established and mature seedlings. And they're providing tons of benefits that we're going to talk some more about in a little bit. And we have another buffer that we did at Crozet Elementary with students. And despite it being with student assistants, these seedlings are also extremely successful. And as you can see, there's a me for scale, but over the course of time, these have really exploded and regenerated this, what was a bare area, into a very established and what will be even more established forest. We also have actually done a very large scale planting. This is partnering with the James River Association and their James River Buffer Program, where they work with private landowners and other property owners to restore riparian forests along property that they own along bodies of water. And they do this entirely at no cost to the landowner. And we partner with Dunlora, a community up in the northern area of the Rivanna River, to plant just under 3,000 seedlings across 9 acres back in 2021. And we also partnered with the Department of Forestry to work on natural regenerating pine forests in 4 acres on this property as well. And over the course of what is now 5 years since this planting has been established, these seedlings have been thriving, and it is at no cost to the landowner because the James River Buffer Program covers 3 years of initial maintenance and also replanting for things that don't survive. And they are getting land restored without having to pay anything. The only thing you do have to pay is losing access to some of your open space. And so I'm sure you guys are thinking, well, why do we need trees, right? And it's because riparian vegetation provides a lot of physical integrity and benefits to water quality. As Claire had been mentioning earlier, having a lot of canopy around and a lot of existing trees provides a slowdown of runoff. That water takes longer to percolate through an established canopy than it does over an open field. And those really secure root systems provide filtration that slows it down and also slows down pollutants from getting into our bodies of water as well. Those roots also provide structure, help hold together our banks, and that canopy helps provide some moderation in our temperatures by creating shade. That way you don't have a stream that's, hot and then cold, depending on whether or not it's cloudy that day. If there's constant shade, that water temperature stays level, and it keeps everyone happy because it keeps oxygen levels consistent. And then those roots also help trap sediment, trash, and other solids from getting washed down and producing microplastics in other areas of our watershed. And also, these riparian forests help benefit our benthic macroinvertebrates that we just spend a lot of time talking about. So those leaves and branches that are coming from these established riparian forests are the main source of carbon for a lot of our streams, which is a great source of energy. And that woody debris creates habitat, and that creates leaf packs. And within those leaf packs is where our macroinvertebrates like to live, in those highly oxygenated, sources of food for them. And these leaves also provide nutrients that degrade over time and feed into the water column and help feed the plants back too. And leaves help provide the life cycle to the bugs, because as these leaves fall in and they come into the ground, come into contact with the water, there's microbes and bacteria and fungi that start the initial breakdown. And as that breakdown happens, there's usually, a little bit of a nasty film that would form on these leaves. Like, let's say you pick them up out of the water, like say out of a pond or in your bird bath, there's that nasty film on the leaves. Our benthic macroinvertebrates, specifically some insects that we call scrapers, that's how they like to feed, and that's what they like to feed on. And so they are getting food from that film. And as more time passes and the leaf breaks down more, we have shredders that then tear apart those really soft leaves. And then we have other insects that we call collectors and filterers, which then take those smaller particulates and feed from that. And so we have all this trickle down that happens just from leaves falling into bodies of water. And as these microinvertebrates feed, they reproduce, and that reproducing, environment feeds fish, which then feeds things in our terrestrial environments as well. And so we've talked a little about planting in riparian forests. We could also take a little bit of time to talk about improving riparian forests through invasive plant management. Because you could have a forest, but if it's all invasives, it might not be providing as much of a benefit as if it was all natives. And so why is native vegetation important? Native macroinvertebrates, which we have in our streams, are used to native plants. And having native plants, especially a diversity of native plants, provides different resources for them to feed off of, whether that's different nutrients, different rates of breakdown in the leaves, and different nutrients from multiple different species, is a huge benefit for them compared to this photo here, which is a monoculture of bamboo, which is not native, and also doesn't provide a ton of nutrient to our benthic macroinvertebrates. And so if you have streams that are entirely covered in bamboo, you're not going to have a very happy stream, even if it might be shaded and it might have cool, water, and it might have roots there that are holding the banks together. If the macroinvertebrates there aren't happy, you're not supporting the overall food system at large. And so I have a little demonstration here that is showing you that a very diverse environment of trees supports a very diverse environment overall. So you'll have a lot of different insects emerging, which are feeding birds. You'll have a lot of different insects which are feeding a variety of fish. But let's say you only have a couple of species of trees. There's probably maybe going to be fewer insects because they prefer that species, and you're not having a species of trees around that are supporting other insects. So you'll still have a healthy stream, just not as healthy of one. But if you have a stream that's mostly invasives, it's not really going to support much of anything. It'll support the things that can tolerate feeding on these plants, but these native insects aren't used to feeding off of them, so it's just not good food for them. And there have actually been studies to prove that invasive species aren't beneficial to our native insects. And the study was specifically on Amur honeysuckle, or Lana ceramachii, and its effect on aquatic biota in a stream out in Ohio. We do still have more honeysuckle locally, not as prevalent as other species, but it is still relevant. And in the areas where Amur honeysuckle was removed, compared to areas where it had been retained, the areas where it was removed had significantly improved macrovertebrate diversity. And that diversity was different between the two areas just simply because the invasive species was removed. And if invasive species can affect the macroinvertebrates, it can affect our overall food system. Even within our urban areas, these invasive species threaten our forest. And we have a couple of different photos here of, let's see over here, we have some English ivy growing up the trunk, which is adding a lot of extra weight. And we also have some vines over here that are twining against each other, which can strangle and constrict, and over time can kill even established mature trees. And over here on the left, you might not be able to see as much, but that's an understory of mostly Russian olive, which is not a native, and it's one species that tends to hold its leaves for a very long time and create a very established understory, which stops a lot of our native things from being able to get light in the understory. And that stops seedlings from being able to grow, smaller wildflowers from being able to grow, and overall can slow down the regeneration of our forests. And up here on the far left, you can see some porcelainberry, which has grown over and formed blankets over some trees. And the trees underneath there are struggling because they're not able to get any light and to photosynthesize. So we saw this as a problem and saw that a lot of other organizations see this as a problem and decided we wanted to do something about it. So with an initial project starting in January 2024, we created the Rivanna Forest Health and Resilience Project, where within the 5-mile stretch of the Rivanna River, to start with, we identified forested areas within our 3 public parks along the Rivanna River. And within those parks, we looked at our forest, and with the help of 35 trained volunteers across 134 forests, we determined and assessed invasive species and invasive species cover to help identify and target forested areas for invasive species management. And outside of this, we trained volunteers and engaged community members to be involved on the maintenance of these forests in the long term, as well as the establishment of a long-term partnership where we are hoping to continue this effort onwards. And we're going to show you here the 3 little maps that we generated. This is the first one in Riverview Park, and this is color-coded in the intensity of the invasive species cover, red being the worst, blue being the best. And you can see there's some pretty bad forests that are mixed in here, some areas where there's nothing but invasive species. This here is in Darden Tow Park, where the same code applies. And last but not least, in Penn Park, which is our biggest, most of it looks to be in pretty decent shape, but there's definitely pockets where invasive species have really taken hold. And we really want to control and have great opportunities to control invasive plants in these parks because they are on public land, and we're able to engage our volunteers and members of the community to help contribute to the management here. And in our management efforts, we're able to give back to the river that gives back to us. And between winter in 2024 and the summer of 2025, we had 12 acres treated by a contractor, which the grant paid for. We had an acre that was cleared with the forestry mulcher, which is actually this image you see here, the lined up tree tubes. It was completely clear because it was mostly invasive species. And we have 8.4 acres that are actively being maintained by volunteers. And across all these acres that are being treated, we planted 1,800 trees to help restore canopy. Because as we're removing these invasives, we want to put good things back in. And this is just a little yard sign that we have posted up across the parks. We can learn more about our efforts in building healthy forests along the Rivanna River. We have a lot of project partners that are involved, including Blue Ridge Prism. If you haven't heard of them, they're a wonderful resource to learn about invasive plants and identifying them in your own backyard. We have to control invasive plants because invasive plants evolved in different places. And they can outcompete our native plants, like I had mentioned with the autumn olive, creating a lot of shade, or the porcelainberry creating a blanket that's even killing mature trees. These invasive species are a problem because since they're not from here, they don't have any natural competition. There's not a lot of insects or herbivores or just other things and diseases that are controlling them naturally, and they were brought over here with human intervention. So they require human intervention to control. And we have to control them because if we don't, they're just going to continue to spread and proliferate. And this is important to control because, as we mentioned, they don't provide the same habitat or benefits to wildlife as native plants do. And if those invasive plants completely, take over, we're not going to be able to support our own ecosystem. One of the very last things I want to talk about that RCA does is stabilizing and restoring eroding rivers and stream banks. So back in 2019 and 2020, we had a grant support a planning project where we had the 5-mile stretch of the river assessed for erosion rates. And this was in part inspired by an area near Dardental Park that had actually gotten so washed out that it was exposing critical infrastructure for stormwater and wastewater management. And it was so dire that they weren't able to mitigate it using better efforts. The only thing they were able to do in such a short time span was put down riprap. And so our goal was to come in this assessment, determine areas that need restoration before it gets bad enough that it has to come down to an emergency solution again. So with this, we decided an area that we were going to do a stream bank restoration is at Riverview Park. And at the Rivanna Restoration of Riverview Park project, we selected this park for a variety of reasons. And it's mostly because it's a really ideal location. It will improve water quality and habitat at this location. And this is one of the most popular parks within the city. It's actually the city's only public access to the Rivanna River. It has a lot of important community amenities. There's also a playground. The Rivanna Trail, if you're familiar with it, is a trail that goes all the way around the city of Charlottesville, and a portion of it does come through the park as well. And it'll be protected and improved because if the erosion keeps happening over time at this park, eventually it's going to chip away to the point where there won't be a trail to go through anymore. And our goal is to bring together partners and funders within this park to, recognize its importance and protect it in the long term. And this is a graphic or a concept that we have for the restoration as it is, and it will be getting installed and started at the end of this year. So if any of you come into town, you might see some big changes incoming. Mm-hmm. And last but not least, we're going to talk a little bit about stormwater. We've talked a lot about our streams and our banks, and one of the things that you all can think about is how you can control stormwater as it happens in urban and developed areas. And we want to and need to control it because it increases water pollution as that stormwater carries sediment and chemicals into our bodies of water. And that stormwater can also increase flooding, which then leads to loss of trees, land, trails, and river access as that increased flooding increases erosion. And that erosion can create safety hazards as well. And last but not least, that stormwater, especially in really high flash flooding events, can create harms to wildlife habitat and also to people. There's quite a few things that you as property owners can do. And as we were just discussing, preserving and managing invasive plants in our forests is one thing you can do. We have a program at RCA called the Hack Pack, where we provide you with the supplies, tools, and education necessary to manage invasive plants in your own backyard. The only thing you need to do is put in an application and come to us to pick up the supplies. You could also start using native plants in your landscaping. I saw that you all already had someone come and speak to you about native plants, and there's a lot of existing resources that are great for you to look at. We have some information back there on our table if you want to find out more. And it's also good to vegetate your stream banks. As I mentioned, with the group at Dunlora had a tree planting installed by the James River Buffer Program, for those of you that might be interested and potentially eligible, the program is available to anyone with a body of water on their property and enough space to plant at least a 35-foot buffer. And as I mentioned, that program comes at no cost to you. The only thing you have to do is agree to keep it forested for 15 years. We have more information on that back at the table as well. One of the other things you can do is, as I mentioned, planting trees. You can install rain barrels, rain gardens, and minimize your hard surfaces. And there's a couple different opportunities and programs that exist that actually promote that kind of activity. One of which is the James River Association's rain barrel programs. They're really popular, so there are some that happen out here, but they might be full about now, where they will train you and show you and give you a rain barrel to take home. There's also the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, or VCAP, where they help provide cost, or they help cover costs for the installation of projects like rain barrels, rain gardens, and other stormwater best management practices through the Thomas Jefferson Soil and Water Conservation District. And the Piedmont Master Gardeners also have a Healthy Landscapes and Healthy Lawns programs where they will come out and help provide resources and education on what you can do to help improve your own landscape after completing a small application. There's also a couple of things that you can do that maybe there isn't someone out there with a program existing to help you do it, but it's just a small initiative you could take on your own. You can reduce the usage of lawn chemicals in watering, including fertilizers and pesticides or herbicides, and reducing watering in the seasons where you might not need it so much. It's also, I believe most of you here are on a wastewater management system, but if you have septic, it's good to keep them pumped on a regular schedule so that they aren't leaking and making sure that they're well maintained. You also want to make sure that you're going to properly dispose of household chemicals, like your paints, and let's say motor oil and coolant and things like that. Make sure they're not ending up in your stormwater drains, and just like your pet waste too. Make sure you pick up after your pup and put it away into the trash where it belongs. Maintain your gutters and downspouts. That way it keeps that water flowing in places where it's directed and reducing erosion. And if you have a leaky sink, it's really good, believe it or not, to get it fixed. It might only seem like a drop, but it all adds up. And reducing water where you can, like using your dishwashers and, instead of hand washing, or smaller activities like that, might seem really small, but in a community, it all adds up. It all matters. Those are ways you can participate and improve water quality and manage stormwater in your own property. If you want to come out and help RCA, we have quite a few varieties of volunteer opportunities through our education, restoration, and stewardship programs. We have an interest form on our back table if you're wanting to come out with us and join our email list, or you could fill one out online on our website. You also could potentially serve on our board of directors if you're interested, or you could donate to our program to support us if you're not able to come and make it out yourself. And if you have any questions, shoot us a line at info@rivannariver.org. We're happy to answer as we are able. And speaking of questions, if anyone has any, I'm more than happy to answer, and so it's clear as well. But also thank you all for coming out here tonight. And thank you to the many partners, grant funders, volunteers, and individual donors that make these projects and what we do possible. So, yeah. Any questions?
I have a question. In Richmond, they have these falls across the river. What's the purpose for that?
I think that those in Richmond, like in the James,
Yeah.
I believe that those are old. I want to say they're related to piping,
Oh, really?
and so it's not naturally generated.
Right. It looks like it's cement.
Yeah, there are some low head dams in the area too, and I'm not entirely sure what their purpose is, unfortunately.
And then my other question was, is there a difference between how leaves help the river and how excessive amounts of leaves go into the lake? Like, they've encouraged us not to blow leaves into the lake because it would be too much material.
Yeah, so in a stream where the water's flowing and there's, movement of the water that's eventually taking it downstream versus in a lake, what's happening in the lake is all those leaves are piling up and reducing the holding capacity of the lake by, just taking up that space instead with organic materials. And so over time, as you lower the capacity of the lake, you're also lowering the amount of oxygen that it can hold, which is going to affect the organisms that live within the water as well. And so if you can slow down the space, or the amount of space being taken up by preventing erosion, not blowing leaves in, that way you don't have to worry so much about dredging compared to if things are just falling in naturally. Any other questions? Those are wonderful ones, by the way. Thank you.
You have one more question.
Yeah, absolutely.
You showed a slide during her presentation that had like a red bucket. Was that also a lamprey in that bucket? It would look.
I think it was an eel.
Was it an eel?
Oh, that was getting picked up out of the bucket?
And
It was kind of scary looking.
they're even crazier looking in person.
So the overlap between Rivanna River Conservation District and James, as well as Chesapeake, are there different state requirements from one to the next? Does it all blend together for any challenges to what we might do or might not do within one district or another?
That's a good question. So there definitely is, say, especially with the Chesapeake Bay, that it's so huge and it covers so many different states. Each state has different regulations. They have different, and even different counties and cities will have different, say, buffer regulations, riparian buffer regulations. They will have different states have different water quality standards. So the ones that I kind of talked about were specific for Virginia. But yeah, there are differences as you move around. As far as challenges, I don't think I've run into any challenges. Have you?
No, not so much. I think that as you get, in bigger parts of the watershed, it can be harder to pay attention to everything that's happening on an individual level. And I think that even within RCA, there's sections of our watershed that we don't get to spend a lot of time in. There's a lot of the areas that we don't get to monitor for biological or bacteria monitoring. But weirdly enough, like in partnering with other organizations like the James River Association, we've had opportunities to go out and look at other areas of our watershed that we might not usually get to see. And so I think that that's definitely one of the challenges, I guess, in between organizations is that not everyone can see everywhere.
But yeah, kind of along that same vein, because we do work with so many partners from so many different areas, we have input from, about their specific areas of expertise as well. So yeah, we're really, that's a really beneficial thing for us. So.
You mentioned about, removing some of the dams for species to get back up from the ocean. Are there a lot of big challenges on dams still? What are the kind of the bigger dams that you try to take out, I guess, or?
I think some of the dams are still used, I think by certain agencies, but so the one on the North Fork, because that plant is being decommissioned, so that's a really good time to take out that dam. But there are a lot of things that need to be thought about. And one, it's very costly to remove a dam. If there's, I know with the one that we were kind of looking at, the dam has been there for many, many years. And so there is a backup of sediment and things like that go behind it. So you have to break down that dam in a way that is they were talking about in kind of a couple of different steps. So you kind of break it down and then wait for, a big storm to kind of flush some through and then take the rest out. But there's also challenges with, if we have to go out and do, say, a mussel survey to make sure that there are no endangered mussel species there. If there are, we don't want to kind of start that work in certain, in certain periods of time and things like that. So there's a lot of kind of moving parts that, we have to take into.
Opposed to dam removal?
We have not looked into any of those, no. Yeah, but they're very cool. Yeah.
You said the microvertebrae have a 0 to 10 scale. What are the ones that are 0?
A lot of them, the ones that are 0, are usually our case-making caddisflies. So they're the ones, if you've ever seen case-making caddisflies, they make these beautiful little cases out of whatever like substrates on the bottom of the river, of the stream. So it could be little rocks, it could be little sticks, it could be leaves. And so those organisms, some of those just, are very, very intolerant of pollution. So we just find them in really pristine areas. So in our headwaters, we find them a lot and things like that.
No, I was going to say, we also have examples in some of our preserved macroinvertebrates back on the table. So if you're interested in seeing who's living at the bottom of your streams and you want to take a closer look, we have some for you to look at.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.